Hi, I'm Joe Hart, and I'm going to teach you how to play the guitar part for my new Christmas song, Krampus is Coming. So, dial up a really cool tone and tune up, and let's dive into it. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to play this, all the little bits. It's really not that difficult, but what I'm also going to show you is all the little things, sort of the finesse things that I throw in that really kind of elevated a little bit from just, a couple of basic chords and a riff or two. So, let's take a look at some of that. I came up with the song. I was driving around with my family, my wife and 2 kids, and looking at the Christmas lights and everything. And I'm thinking, there just aren't enough Christmas songs about Krampus. So we're driving around, my wife was driving, and just sitting in the passenger seat. And in my head, I'm kind of thinking, and all of a sudden, this riff just sort of popped into my head. Not completely fully formed, but the rhythm was there. And then when I got home, I threw it down really quick on this awesome little recorder thing that my wife got me. It's like a little USB digital recorder thing. And, then worked on it the next couple of days, kind of fine-tuned the riff and everything. But it kind of happened pretty quick. So let's take a listen. The main riff is pretty much just E minor, and I threw in the flatted fifth, the tritone, just because it sounds scarier. So the main riff is just E, then the low E, G, F sharp, E again, A sharp to the flatted fifth, then E on the 7th fret octave up to the low E, then G, F sharp, E again, then A, then the last time through, just to kind of finalize it. I liked having the 2 different parts, sort of like Smoke on the Water, by Deep Purple, where it's sort of a very similar riff with kind of 2 separate parts that tie it together that make it a little more interesting. So you end up with a longer guitar riff, and it still sounds interesting. It doesn't sound overly repetitive. It's a great way to get a lot of mileage out of a really cool riff, a really cool idea when you're writing a song. Okay, so here's how it sounds. So what I do is I have some power chord type things, and then some single notes, like that. And then 2 chords there, slightly out of tune, but sorry. So also adding to the kind of try to make it interesting there idea with some single notes, some chords. I slide up to the A chord, and I palm mute the single notes and leave the last single note, the open E, not palm muted, so it rings a bit. And I think that kind of makes it a little more interesting for the whole thing. I was going to tune down, to make it like even more scary, but it sounded tighter in standard tuning. So I just left it in standard tuning. I think it sounded tighter, the guitar part. The bass part definitely sounded more alive in E than in E flat or even D. But anyway, onto the verse. So the verse I wanted to sort of dial it back because now there's vocals, and I like having the choruses be kind of bigger, the verses kind of, a little more subdued, so that the vocals stand out more. So all I'm playing is just the rhythm's a little bit different than the rhythm of the choruses, but I like that, it sort of separates them a little bit. And one thing that I'm doing is I'm doing a lot of kind of palm muting and choking the strings, stopping them. The biggest thing I'm doing, though, is I'm strumming that E5 chord, which I'm playing as 3 notes. Usually I play a 5 chord as just 2 notes, very Tony Iommi-ish. But for this I'm doing the 3. I think it sounds a little bit bigger. And what I'm doing is I'm sort of strumming them kind of slowly, so I'm not just hitting the chords like this. That just seemed a little too sharp and, definitive. I wanted it a little kind of greasy, sleazy kind of a feel. So in real slow motion, I'm doing this. Where you're almost hearing the individual string hits. I use a stainless steel pick, which makes quite a clatter on the metal strings, especially the wound ones, the lower strings. So having that extra string noise kind of really makes it kind of sound the way it does. So then the verses are just simply the E, and then it goes up to F sharp for the same rhythm. And for that I'm actually just doing the 2. That's just how I do it when I fret a 5 chord as opposed to an open. I usually do the 3. Sorry, the 2 octaves I meant. So it goes up to the F sharp, then it goes up to G, then A. And I thought that helped move the verse by ascending up the E minor scale, the first 4 notes of it. Helped to move the verse towards the next chorus. And, I think I always want to try to have, when I'm writing a song, a sense of motion, a sense of purpose, where one part has to go to the next part. It just sort of makes logical sense. I like that. I think it helps the song to really flow. So for the verses there, the rhythm's a little bit different. I just wanted to mention that I'm playing a little more upbeats, and I think that helps to separate it from the choruses too. Again, it sounds very similar, it sounds very familiar once you've heard the intro, which is the chorus riff. Then the verses sound very familiar, but they do sound different. And I like that, I try to do that when I'm writing. Familiar yet different. So the open E chords for the verses, I was trying to do something where the chords would be like da-da, but the octave sounded too much. So, I didn't like that, so I tried like a big old 5 chord, sort of like Pete Townsend would do. But I didn't like that. That sounded just like an E5 chord, surprisingly enough, but didn't sound like it was really moving. And I wanted to have some sort of a movement where it was like da, but not with the octave. So something I was trying like. And I didn't really like that. It sounded too many 5s, too many roots and 5s. All thrown together. So what I ended up doing was, I heard this sort of in my head, if the guitar just plays the basic chords like I just showed you, then the bass could do the octave and it wouldn't sound, I don't want to say wrong, it would sound more like how I heard it in my head. I just didn't realize in my head I was hearing the bass do the octaves, because usually I hear sort of the whole thing. I don't hear the individual parts. I don't hear like just a guitar riff. I hear a rhythm, I hear drums, sort of the whole thing, as a whole, because that's how you hear a song anyway. Okay, so now we have the little lead bit over the intro, and then the last half of the choruses, the parts without the vocals. Because of course, I didn't want to play something with the vocals, because then it's buried underneath and cluttered. I wanted to try to keep things fairly simple. When I try to write a song, I try to keep things, I don't want to say simple, but you want to have some sort of a purpose to everything, and if you're just throwing everything on top, it ends up being cluttered. So where there's no vocals, I wanted to add a little guitar bit, and then where there's vocals, of course, I don't have the guitar bit. But the little guitar bit, again, I came up with the riff and everything, and I'm like, I'm kind of hearing this thing, and it was a minor third to the root. So obviously in E, that's just a G to E. Okay, but I wanted it to sound higher, obviously, like a little guitar fill, little guitar solo kind of vibe to it. But, really part of the song. And the big thing is, once I sort of came up with, oh, that's the idea that I want, which is just G at the 12th fret, and then E at the 14th fret. Then I was like, oh, okay, you know what? I want it to sound like a whip, really to kind of go along with the whole Krampus idea. So what I do is I do a little rake before the G. So I'm muting out a couple of strings with my left hand and with the palm of my right hand, and then lift the right hand off when I hit the G that I'm fretting. So I end up with like a... Okay. When I'm in the heat of the moment, I can usually do it pretty well. When I stop and think about it, that's when I sort of mess things up. But I have a rake at the beginning, so the little bang, and then I bend the G a tiny bit, just sort of like a bluesy kind of a thing. Again, that sort of, sleazy, greasy kind of a vibe that I wanted for the song. And then the E, and what I do a lot, learned this from Yngwie Malmsteen's stuff, is I'll hold a note for, half a second or something, kind of let the note, let the pitch, kind of sink in, and then add vibrato. So I ended up with doing something like this. And then, of course, I added the wah, which just really helps to accent, especially the rake at the beginning. And then when I push forward on the wah for that, leave it up, and then pull back on the wah at the very end, and it really sort of has like a whip sound, and then the whip pulling back when I come back on the wah. Probably overthinking all of this way too much, but, whatever. So, I have my wah pedal so I can kind of show you how it all sounds. And it's a Vox wah that I modded a bit. It sounds, pretty cool, and I like it. I use wah a lot, definitely way more than most guitar players. But I really don't like the, waka 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 kind of, 70s kind of wah sound. I try to use it more as a tone control, to accent things and change the sound of the guitar, rather than just bucka bucka bucka, But anyway, so we ended up with this. So that's pretty much it. Simple enough. And I had, a noise gate and everything. Gets rid of that little bit of resonating with the wah pedal and everything. I think it's just because the amp's so close to it and all that. But hope this helped you to be able to play along to Krampus is Coming.